Hello and welcome. Welcome to another Gourmet Box moment here together. My name is Marc Checkley from Drink Moi, working with the cheese ladies of Atelier de Fromage. My background looks a bit different in this episode. Why? Because I'm coming to you live from Singapore, so it's very lush. Good thing for sweet wine. Not so sweet, hot. Yes, about 32 degrees Celsius where I am today. And so this box, the Gourmet Box of this month, is very special because it's a wine that we don't always know much about, but definitely can enjoy. Sweet, luxurious, sinfully wonderful, sweet dessert wine. So what you're drinking today comes from Terre de Lavaux, a larger vigneron winemaker in Lutry, just on the foothills of Lavaux and very close to where I first started my Lavaux and Swiss wine adventures. So this wine is grown mainly on clay soils, very typical of Lavaux, but with some limestone, which really gives it some minerality, some brightness and freshness, which is what you need for dessert wine. If it is too heavy, too cloying, then you'll feel very full from the experience. In terms of the grapes, it's the Pinot family that is in the Orpheus Vendoux. We've got Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, and Pinot Noir, just a small amount of Pinot Noir. I say the Pinot family. Chardonnay is part of that. It may be called a different name, but in fact it was discovered and its origins are connected to the Pinots, the Pinot prestige generations and family. Each of those different grapes brings something to the blend. And then, of course, we get to how it is made. And that is the difference with sweet or dessert wine, or as it's known in this bottle, vin doux, sweet wine. So how does it first come about? How do we really understand sweet wine? Sweet wine has been around for a very, very long time. In fact, it was a way to preserve wine. And so that has been around for thousands, tens of thousands of years. But it's only been in the last 30 to 40 years that we've really come to understand and appreciate sweet wine again. It didn't do well during the industrialization of wine, where wine was being spat out of machines very quick, very fast. So sweet winemaking is very much an art and cannot just be ignored for just saying it's sweet, it's easy to make things sweet. Things are sweet, but with a craft and timing perfection. So with this wine, it starts off being made as all still dry wines. And then, during fermentation, yeast is added. Yeast is everywhere. It's right around me. It's here, there, and on the skins of the grapes. And we also can add yeast from certain parts of the world, give certain characters of yeast. Just like in beer making and whiskey making with cereal grains and beer with hops, where those hops are procured or the origin brings different character. And so the yeast is added to the ferment. But normally for a dry wine, the yeast will naturally eat the sugar, yum, 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 and keep eating and keep eating and keep eating those sugars that are found in the juice, found in the grapes, until there's none left. And that is what we call a dry wine. Dry of sugar. That's what the term means. But with a sweet wine, there's two ways, actually three ways, but the third way you should not be doing as a winemaker. So the first way is you will add yeast, but not enough. So that means there's a lot of sugar, and the yeast that's put in a smaller amount based on the quantity of the grape juice, doesn't have enough energy to eat all the sugars. There's just, he just said, I'm done, I'm over. And so that means there's residual sugar left over, RS, which you may see sometimes in wine making books and wine reviews. So that means the yeast has made it dry, but not dry enough, and there's still nice, sweet, sugary juice left over. The other way is if you stop alcoholic fermentation by cutting it through with alcohol, pure alcohol, which is what fortified wine is, like port, for instance. Now that is sweet and very forward in sweetness, but very high in alcohol. So that's the other way you can stop alcoholic fermentation and stop the yeast in its tracks. The third way is actually just by adding sugar. Now this happened again through the industrialization era of wines. The grapes weren't harvested always at the best time, or they weren't of the best quality, or the winemaker wanted to get out the product faster. So they actually just literally poured in syrup or sugar syrup. That's not done now, unless you may have a neighbor out the back doing hobby sweet wine. But generally we don't need to, because we know and understand so much more about sweet wine. And Orpheus is one of those special wines that has been left late on the vine, but not late harvest, not really going into that ultra late period of the grape growing season. So it's not suffering from any botrytis or noble rot, which you may have heard of before. So they're still very much lush grapes. Then they're fermented separately, and then they are aged in barrel for 12 months. French oak barrels. Now that's what happens, is that sweetness is there, but then the barrel brings some character and brings some other notes coming through. And this is where you get those wonderful aromas, if you have a whiff now, of cooked fruit, apricots, peaches, baking spices like cinnamon, and also slightly buttery vanilla elements coming through. Because oak softens down very tart elements, but it doesn't make it less sweet. Sweetness stays in the wine, just relatively like acidity. Acidity stays in a wine. It can mellow, but it will not disappear unless the wine turns, but that's already too late. Missed opportunity. So this is how the Orpheus is made, and how many sweet wines are made. And then, of course, that also leads on to the idea of how we use sweet wine. Sweet wine should always have acidity, because it's still fruity, which is the fresh element to it. But the sweetness allows it to be paired with many different styles of food, particularly Asian food. Asian food has the element of sweet and sour, the balance of yin and yang. So you'll find a lot of those types of foods, like sweet and sour pork, if you've ever had it, or braised aubergine, will pair very well with sweeter style wine. In our head, in our type of cooking, we normally think of dessert wine with dessert, which is very true, sweet with sweet. It works. Or with cheese. And this is where we come together now for this lovely collection of 3 beautiful cheeses. Each of them paired and will pair perfectly with this wine. Why is the bottle smaller? A lot of people ask. Sweet wine generally is not 75 or 70 cl, but normally 50 or 37. It's because there's a lot less juice. If you leave grapes on the vine longer, there's more sugar than juice. So in fact, you're still getting the same amount and the same quantity of grapes in your wine, but there's just less juice. Also, it'd be pretty tough to drink an entire 75 centiliter bottle of Vendu. You'll be bouncing off the walls, as we say. So these three cheeses are really interesting. And we're going to step through each of them to what their characters bring and how the wine complements. First on the list is a dream to remember. So we've got this soft, creamy cheese called Decadence from Fribourg. And this one is creamy. So just think of it. Sweet cream. Fruit and cream. It is the same idea with the wine. The creaminess allows it to just coat the mouth, and envelop the mouth. And then you cut through with those lovely cooked fruit elements and spicy elements of the wine. Remember, food first, wine second. This one is lovely because it oozes out beautifully and delicately. Then, of course, the Blue Day, which is the Blau Schalkino. I hope I said that properly for all Swiss German speakers. This is from Zurich. And this, I'm a big fan of blue cheese. The salty, peppery lick that cuts right through it. This is going back to pairing the yin and yang of foods. Remember? Sweet and salty. Jammy and peppery. Spicy. So that is very much the style here. And this cheese is beautiful as it is very tight and very defined, but also not too hard, not too soft. It really coats the mouth, but doesn't fill the mouth too much, which means you get, again, that nice wine coming through. It's really, really my favorites. And then, of course, a sweet roll in the hay, as we all love to do occasionally. And this is what you call a classic Swiss cheese. This is the most classic of all of them, which is semi-hard or semi-soft. This is from Bern region, and it's creamy, but it has elements of straw and hay coming through, grassiness, which again, the reason why we love it so much with this wine is it because we've got the lightness, the freshness, the spiciness of the wine, and we've got the earthy grassiness, the straw, the concentrate elements coming through, more aromatic in the nose, finding themselves with equilibrium in the middle. So these are what these three cheeses bring. And then, of course, we pair that with our little special treat for you, this Swiss meringue chocolate from Cadizio, the ladies at Cadizio, which is made in Lausanne. Of course, we don't have cacao beans in Switzerland. They're brought in directly, but it's single origin and 38% cacao, milk, chocolate, Grand Cru. The Swiss meringue element, then you find, obviously, the crunch and the texture. And you get the lushness and the honeyness from the wine. And then, of course, the creaminess, just like our first cheese, the Decadence, finding its way to coat the mouth and make it all just ooze together. We really enjoyed putting this box together, and I'm sorry I can't be with you drinking and eating it all, but I do think you'll be enjoying the experience. Whenever you think you want to understand sweeter wines or dessert wines, there's two ways of doing it. Three ways of doing it. Everything good in threes. First of all, generally, sweeter wines are lower in alcohol. Not all of them. Fortified wines, like port, have a higher alcohol content, but that's a different style. But if it's dry style or standard winemaking, they generally will have a slightly lower alcohol, maybe in the 10.5s to the 11.5s region. Moscato, for that reason, for that example, you'll know normally sits around 8. It's quite a fruity wine. It's sweet, a sweet fruity wine. I'll get to that in the next part. The second thing you need to look for is when you drink the wine, does it coat your lips? Do you need to lick your lips? And is there a feeling of stickiness or jamminess on the lips? That means it is sweet. We can't always pick out sweetness, but it leaves a residue, leaves a mark. The third way is the most intriguing. A lot of people get confused with fruitiness meaning sweetness, when in fact you can have a highly fruity wine, like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Chenin Blanc, for instance, but is ultra dry. The way you look at it is fresh fruit is always a lot drier in style, whereas fermented fruit is a lot more sweeter in style. So can you smell, instead of fresh apples, like a good unoaked Chardonnay, are you getting cooked or stewed apples with a bit of butter and spice? So there is always a certain style that a winemaker will go for. And so this is another way. Don't discount sweet wine as just something to have after dinner or something that's a bit cheap. The best sweet wines can last for years because the acidity holds the brightness, the minerality, and the freshness, but also has so much more development because those fruits keep stewing away. Enjoy your gourmet moment. Can't wait to see your responses, and we'd love to have your feedback. Next month, we finish before the summer pause with a very special box, a special edition box, the Summer Apéro box. A beautiful box, no cheese specifically, but there's still cheese in there, and beautiful sparkling cava. All for you. So make sure you order before the end of May. Enjoy your gourmet moments. Enjoy your wine and cheese moments with your chocolate. See you again, not so close to the equator next time, but a bit closer to you in Europe. Santé!